Welcome to the podcast to Philippe. And today, we're diving into something really cool.
Yeah, this is a good one.
I mean, who doesn't love a good car engine story?
Especially one with a twist.
Exactly. We're talking about a potential revolution in car engine tech, but here's the kicker. It has nothing to do with AI.
Yep.
This is pure, old-school mechanical ingenuity.
You got it.
And the mind behind it. An 81-year-old French inventor named Maurice Sanjame.
Working right out of his garage.
Can you imagine that? Like tinkering away and boom, a breakthrough.
Pretty incredible, right?
So we've got articles and some technical analysis, and what we're going to do today is break it all down.
Unpack it.
Yeah, unpack it. We'll look at what exactly he's invented, why it's potentially so game-changing, and what challenges it faces.
Sounds good.
Before we get too far, though, if you're finding this interesting, please consider hitting that subscribe button on YouTube.
We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers.
Your support really helps us out. Okay, let's get into it. So first off, who is this Maurice Sanjame?
Well, he's 81 years old, as you said. Lives in a town called Denay in Maine-et-Loire, France.
Okay.
And he's basically spent his life tinkering, inventing things.
Like a classic inventor.
Exactly. And now he's come up with this engine that, well, it's pretty revolutionary.
Okay, so the engine, it's a combustion engine, right? But what's so different about it?
The big thing, the heart of his invention, is that it doesn't have a crankshaft.
No crankshaft. But, I mean, isn't that like the core of how a combustion engine works?
It is in a conventional engine, yeah.
Right. The crankshaft is what takes that up and down motion of the pistons and turns it into, like, rotation to power the wheels,
Like
right?
how it's always been done.
So how on earth does this engine work without a crankshaft?
So instead of the crankshaft and connecting rods, he's using this system of rotating eccentrics.
Rotating eccentrics? I'm not sure I follow.
It's a bit hard to visualize, but imagine like off-center weights that spin. They create a pushing force as they rotate. And he's combined these with gears and a special rotating disc to convert the piston's linear motion into rotation.
So you still get that rotational force, but without the crankshaft.
Exactly.
Now, I'm curious, why go to all this trouble to get rid of the crankshaft? What's the advantage?
The main benefit is that it eliminates transverse friction in the cylinders.
Transverse friction.
Yeah, it's the sideways pressure on the piston caused by the connecting rods in a typical engine. And it's a big source of energy loss.
Oh, okay. How much are we talking? Like a little bit or?
Estimates say it's responsible for something like 40% of the energy loss in a regular engine.
40%? That's a lot.
Yeah, huge.
So if you can eliminate that, then you're talking about some serious efficiency gains.
Right. And that translates to better fuel economy, fewer emissions, potentially a big deal.
Okay, so less fuel consumption, less pollution. That's fantastic. Any other potential advantages?
Well, because you're not dealing with a complex crankshaft setup, the engine can be much more compact.
Smaller engine, more space. Got it.
And the manufacturing process could be simplified too, which might even make it cheaper to produce.
Fewer parts, easier to build. I like it. So what are we waiting for? Why aren't these engines in cars already?
Well, there are some pretty significant hurdles to overcome.
Like what?
For starters, it's not a plug-and-play situation. You can't just drop this into any car.
Right.
The shape's different. The mounting points would need to be different. You'd probably need to modify the car's chassis to fit it in.
Okay, so not a simple swap.
Not at all. And then there's the transmission.
Oh, about it.
Well, remember, there's no crankshaft.
Yeah.
So current transmissions, they're all designed to work with a crankshaft.
Right.
They wouldn't work with this engine. You'd need to modify them significantly or even design a whole new transmission system.
I see. Starting to see the challenges here.
And then there's the cooling system. This engine might generate heat differently, so you'd need to adapt the cooling system to handle that.
Keep that engine from overheating.
Exactly. And what about the electronics? All those computer systems that manage the engine in a modern car.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Those would need to be reprogrammed or redesigned to work with this new type of engine.
Makes sense. So we're talking about pretty major engineering challenges to get this thing road ready.
Absolutely. And then on top of all that, there's the whole regulatory side of things.
Like safety regulations and emission standards.
Exactly. It would need to go through a rigorous approval process, what's called homologation, to make sure it meets all the standards.
Sounds like a lot of red tape.
It can be.
Okay, so we've got the technical challenges, the regulatory hurdles. What about the cost? Can this thing actually be produced affordably?
Well, that's another big question mark. It all comes down to industrial feasibility. Can you mass produce these engines efficiently? What about the cost of installation in vehicles? and long-term maintenance.
Right, all important factors.
And then there's the question of reliability and durability. How well will these engines hold up under real-world driving conditions over the long term?
You don't want it breaking down every other week.
Exactly. So a lot of testing is needed to prove that it can handle the demands of daily use.
Makes sense. Now, I imagine this engine would need to be scaled up or down depending on the type of vehicle, right? You're not going to put the same engine in a tiny car and a big truck.
Absolutely. Adapting the design for different engine displacements to suit various vehicle types is another key challenge.
Okay.
And what about fuel types? Get it run on gasoline, diesel? What about alternative fuels like biofuels or hydrogen?
Right. Those are becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, so ensuring compatibility with different fuels, potentially making adjustments to the fuel delivery and combustion systems is crucial.
So we've got a lot of technical considerations there. And one thing you mentioned earlier, the combustion process itself, that seems like it would need some fine-tuning as well.
Absolutely. Developing a precise combustion control strategy is key for minimizing emissions and ensuring smooth, consistent performance.
So managing those tiny variations in power between each combustion cycle, making sure it runs smoothly in all sorts of driving conditions.
Exactly. It's all about optimizing the combustion process to get the best performance and the lowest emissions. And before any of this can happen on a larger scale, a functional prototype needs to be built.
Right, because right now this is all just theoretical.
Well, it exists in his garage.
Yeah, but to really see if this has legs, you need to build a working prototype.
Right, one that can be rigorously tested and evaluated.
And how long would something like that take?
Estimates say around 18 months, maybe more.
So a year and a half at least to get a prototype up and running, and that would require some serious investment, I imagine.
Absolutely. You need industry partners who have the expertise, the facilities, and the resources to take it from concept to a working prototype.
So finding those partners is crucial.
It is. And then even if you have a successful prototype, there's still the massive challenge of integrating this technology into existing manufacturing processes.
Right, because car factories are set up to build traditional engines.
Exactly. Retooling those factories to produce this new type of engine would be a huge undertaking.
And expensive, I'm sure.
Definitely. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to cost. If this engine can't be manufactured at a competitive price, it's not going to be viable.
So a lot of challenges ahead, but also a lot of potential. And it's not just cars.
Right. This technology could have applications in other areas as well.
I read something about aeronautics, maybe even energy production.
Yeah, the potential for lighter, more efficient engines could be a game changer in aviation.
Interesting.
And in the energy sector, it could potentially be used to improve the efficiency of gas turbines.
So implications beyond just the automotive world. Pretty amazing when you consider that this all came from one guy tinkering in his garage.
It really is. A testament to individual ingenuity and the power of a good idea.
So to wrap this up, we have an 81-year-old inventor who might have stumbled onto something truly groundbreaking, a new way of thinking about combustion engines.
And it all stems from this fundamental need to be more efficient with our energy usage.
Less fuel consumption, fewer emissions, that's a goal we can all get behind. It makes you wonder, could this non-AI innovation actually be the future of engine technology? Could it reshape the way we think about powering our vehicles and maybe even other industries?
It's certainly a possibility. It'll be fascinating to see how this unfolds.
Absolutely. And remember, if you're as intrigued by this as we are, please consider subscribing to the podcast of Philippe on YouTube. Your support helps us keep bringing you these deep dives into the fascinating world of technology and innovation.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us.